welcome to this video. If you like this video, please hit the like button. If you want to comment or ask any questions, then please do. Please feel free to share this with anyone and everyone. And don't forget to hit that subscribe button for all the latest tech news from this channel. Now, let's get on with the video. Hi and welcome everybody to this OSPF NSSA Totally NSSA configuration demonstration. So on the right is the topology we're going to use for this demonstration, and it's the same topology we used in the Stub Totally Stubby demonstration, but with the added Area 9 NSSA and Totally NSSA. So what that means is we're going to configure it as an NSSA initially, and then turn it into a Totally NSSA and show you how to do that. The configurations for Area 0, Area 3 and Area 6 are carried over from the previous Stub Totally Stubby tutorial. So they're going to be unchanged. That's this area, Area 0, Area 3 and Area 6. The additional IP network scheme for the interfaces will be as follows. So AE2 between R1 and R6 will be 192.168.1.16/30. So one interface is 17 and one is 18. AE2 between R6 and R7 will be 192.168.1.20. So one interface is 21 and one interface is 22. And GE005 between R7 and R8 will be 192.168.100.0/30, which gives us an address on one interface of 1 and on one interface of 2. As per the previous Stub lesson, there are some extra pieces of configuration that we need to complete for an NSSA and a Totally NSSA area. In this lesson, we will also introduce you to policies. And the reason we have to do that is because we have to configure a very basic policy on the ASBR router 7 to allow the injection of the static routes to the external router loopback address. This is the external router. We can call it customer, whatever you want to call it. And its loopback address is 8.8.8.8, and we'll see that in the configuration work. The policy we need to add to router 7, the autonomous system border router, we'll show you that now. So we need to complete a set policy options policy statement, and this statement will be an intuitive name that you will utilize. And again, we'll see this in the config and be able to explain a bit more there. Then we create a term. We can call that any name we want as well, make it intuitive. Here I've called it stat-OSPF. And where do we want it from? Well, we want it from the protocol static, because it's a static route. Again, we use the same statement, the same term, and we say, well, we'll accept that then if it's a static. And then we export this policy statement into OSPF itself. That will allow the ASBR to flood Area 9 with Type 7 LSAs. When we come to configure the ABR for a Totally NSSA, we also have to configure the default LSA. Remember, we had to do that in the previous Stub lesson as well to make it Totally Stubby. What that does is it allows a default route, which will be a Type 3 LSA, to flood into the Totally NSSA, which it will be at that point in time. That actually removes all the other Type 3 LSAs, if you remember from the previous lesson. So now that we have the topology discussed, let's complete the core of this tutorial, which is the configuration and examination of the config results. So here we are at the configuration screen of router 6. This is where we are going to start our configuration, as this is the ABR. So we're going to pop the loopback and AE 2.0 that connects to router 1 in Area 0. So let's start with that. So we go into edit mode and we complete set protocols OSPF area 0000, interface LO0.0. That's our loopback interface, and now we're going to put AE2 in there as well. So we'll pop AE2.0 into OSPF area 0, and we'll commit those changes. Now we're going to pop over to router 3, not router 1. We'll check router 3 first and see if we can see these networks in the OSPF data. So we're on router 3 and we complete a show OSPF database. And as we can see, we have the summary LSA for router 6's loopback interface, exactly as we expect. So we're now back at router 6, and we're now going to confirm that we can see the networks from area 0 and the summaries. So if we exit back to operational mode and we do a show OSPF database, and yes, we see the summaries, we see the networks, and we see the router IDs. So these are the LSAs that we expect to see in here with the correct networks. Now we're going to put AE0 into area 9 and turn area 9 into an NSSA. So we go into config mode or edit, and we will do a set protocols OSPF area 0009, and we'll call it NSSA, and then we'll put our required interface, which is AE0. So we put interface AE0.0, and we will commit this change. However, that isn't going to do anything just yet, because we also need to configure router 7's interface, AE0 interface, also to go into area 0009, and as per the stub, we have to create it as an NSSA interface. So let's go ahead and do that. So here we are on router 7, so we go into edit mode, and we do set protocols OSPF area 0009 NSSA. So we also need to put in there our interface of AE0. So we're going to do that now. And we'll commit those changes. Now that the commit has been completed, let's go to router 3 and see what is on there now. So as we can see on router 3, we now have the summary for the loopback address on router 7. We also have now, you'll see here, an ASBR summary LSA for router 6's loopback. So it's forwarding that ASBR summary, because as we know, router 6 is the ABR that will forward that from the ASBR, which is router 7. So we're now back at the config interface or the command line of router 7. And what we're going to do here now is we are going to inject the static routes into OSPF. So we go into edit mode, and we will do a set policy options, policy statement, and we will call this statement static to OSPF. And we'll put a term in there and we'll call it stat OSPF from protocol static. So if we do from protocol static, and we'll enter that, and we'll use the up arrow because that will save us typing all of that back in again. So we need to do a then accept after the term, So we do a then accept, and we need to place this into our protocols. So we do set protocols OSPF, and we export static to OSPF. We can now commit this, and once it's been committed, we can go back to router 3 and we can have a look at what we see in there now. So here we are back at router 3. I've left the OSPF database last shown readout on the screen so that we can compare the difference. So again, if we do a show OSPF database and we have a look at what we have on there now. So you'll notice now that we have an external type, okay, with the loopback interface address of the external router or customer router, the one that is advertising the static routes, or it has a static route to router 7. Likewise, if we have a look at the OSPF database on router 6, so we'll exit back to operational mode and we'll do a show OSPF database, we see it on here too. We also see all of the summaries, but again, we'll look at that in a moment. So we have the NSSA and we have the external showing. If we look on router 7, which is the ASBR, we see all the summary LSAs advertised or flooded into the area 9, by the ABR. So what we're going to do is we'll go to router 3 and we will confirm connectivity by pinging the loopback address of router 8. So we are now back at router 3 and we'll do a ping 8.8.8.8, which is the loopback of the external system. And you'll notice that it doesn't work. And there is a good reason for that, and we'll look at that now. Here we are at router 8, and let's look and see if we can see where the problem exists. So if we do a show configuration, and we do it as a display set, we will notice that the ping packets are getting here, but they have no way of knowing how to get back. So on here, we can do an edit, and we'll do a set routing options, static route. Just for this particular demonstration, we'll do everything. So we'll do 0000/0, and the next hop is going to be the opposing address of this address. So 100.1, 192.168.100.1. And we are going to commit this. We have to wait for the OSPF reconvergence, but if we go back to router 3 and we wait one moment, we now see that we can ping the loopback address of the external router. If we were to have a look at router 5, which we know is the stub router within the stub area, which is area 3, then we do not see it in there. And the reason for that is because if you remember, the LSA type 5s are not allowed within a stub area. As can be seen though, we can actually ping 8.8.8.8 because of this injected LSA type 3 summary. If you notice though, we can ping the loopback of the external router, router 8. And the reason for that is, if you remember, the LSA type 3 summary injection for a default route that the stub ABR floods area 3 with. Now we're back at router 6, which is the ABR, because what we want to do is we want to turn this area 9, into a totally NSSA area. So we are going to go into edit mode and we're going to do set protocols OSPF area 0009, and we are going to turn it into this Totally NSSA by completing the default LSA. Remember, we had to do this on the Stub as well. My apologies. So we do the NSSA, the default LSA, and we're going to do the default metric of 10. We're also going to give it a metric type of 1. So we'll go back to the default LSA and we'll do metric type 1. And we're going to commit this. And we are also going to do the no summaries command. So we do a set protocols OSPF area 0009 NSSA no summaries. And we're going to commit this and we're going to see what the results are after we have completed this. So back on router 7, you will notice now that all of these summaries have disappeared and have been replaced by the one type 3 LSA summary of a default route. The important part being is, can we, from router 3 and router 5, still ping the loopback address of the external router, router 8? Let's have a look. On router 3, we will confirm if we can still ping 8.8.8.8 after the changes. Yes, we can. So we know that default route into, advertised by the ABR, into the Totally NSSA is functioning as expected. Let's confirm with the Stub router if that can also communicate with a Totally NSSA and the external network. And yes, it can too. From a configuration or basic configuration perspective, this completes the work of showing you an NSSA and then the conversion to a Totally NSSA. So we're going to go back to the presentation now and conclude this lesson. So that concludes our NSSA, Totally NSSA area demonstration and configuration. So that's the presentation and configuration. So hopefully you enjoyed this lesson and you'll hit that subscribe button to join us for more lessons tutorials. Thanks for enjoying the video. Bye-bye.